A giant shadow falls across a burning village. Screams pierce the night air as flames consume everything in their path. In the chaos, a massive armored figure moves through the carnage, deliberate and unstoppable. This is no random raid. This is calculated terror. In a throne room years later, a skull explodes like overripe fruit. Blood sprays across marble floors as a prince's confession echoes through the chamber. The crowd's cheers turn to horror. They came for justice. They witnessed something far worse. But before all of this, in a quiet keep in the Westerlands, two brothers play with wooden toys. The older boy discovers his younger brother holding something that belongs to him. What happens next takes only seconds, but the screams will last for minutes. Three grown men struggle to stop what's already done. A child's face melts into the coals, and a monster is revealed. This is the story of Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, 8 feet of muscle and rage. A knight who made kings tremble and kingdoms bleed, from the moment he burned his brother's face for touching a toy, to the day he confessed his darkest sins while crushing a prince's skull, to his transformation into something that shouldn't exist. This is a tale of absolute cruelty enabled by absolute power. Tonight, we trace the complete path of the most feared knight in Westeros. Every atrocity, every victim, every choice that built the legend of the mountain. Hey guys, before we begin this dark journey through fire and blood, take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you enjoy these deep dives into the monsters of Westeros. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always amazing to see our community across the world. Now get comfortable, dim those lights, and let's step into the nightmare that was Gregor Clegane's life. This is a story without heroes, only survivors. Our story begins in the Westerlands, the richest region of the Seven Kingdoms, sometime around 266 after conquest. In the shadow of Casterly Rock, seat of House Lannister, sits a modest castle called Clegane's Keep. This is home to House Clegane, one of the youngest noble houses in Westeros. The Clegane story starts just 2 generations before our monster's birth. Their grandfather was no lord, no knight, just a kennel master at Casterly Rock who cared for Lord Tytos Lannister's hunting dogs. During one autumn hunt, a lioness attacked Lord Tytos. The kennel master threw himself between lord and beast, saving Tytos's life but losing a leg and 3 of his prized dogs in the desperate fight. Tytos Lannister, grateful beyond measure, did something remarkable. He granted the kennel master a knighthood, lands, and a tower house. The newly made Ser Clegane chose his sigil carefully. 3 black dogs on a golden field, the yellow of autumn grass, a permanent reminder of the 3 hounds who died saving his master. The kennel master's son became Lord Tytos's squire and eventually inherited these modest holdings. This is crucial to understand. House Clegane wasn't ancient nobility with centuries of tradition. They were landed knights, newly elevated, desperate to prove themselves worthy. They served House Lannister with absolute loyalty, because the Lannisters made them everything they were. Clegane's keep itself was unremarkable. Dark stone halls, a few towers, modest lands in Lannister territory, southeast of Casterly Rock, isolated enough that what happened within those walls could stay hidden, close enough to Casterly Rock that the Cleganes could serve their Lannister lords quickly when called. The family itself was small. The second Ser Clegane, son of the kennel master, married and had 3 children. First came an unnamed daughter who would die young under circumstances nobody wanted to discuss. Then came Gregor, the heir. Finally, 5 or 6 years later, came Sandor. Gregor was born wrong. Not visibly deformed, but wrong nonetheless. He grew at an alarming rate, far beyond normal children. His size came with constant blinding headaches that would plague him his entire life. Modern readers might recognize the symptoms of gigantism, likely caused by a tumor pressing on his brain. Medieval Westeros just saw a boy growing into something monstrous. By his teenage years, Gregor would stand nearly 8 feet tall and weigh over 420 pounds of solid muscle. He could wield a 6-foot greatsword in one hand while carrying a massive shield in the other. His strength was genuinely superhuman, his size genuinely terrifying. But the headaches never stopped. The pain never relented. And that pain, combined with something dark already inside him, would forge one of the most terrifying figures in Westerosi history. The monster wasn't made in a single moment. He was built piece by piece, choice by choice, atrocity by atrocity. Clegane's Keep, sometime around 273 after conquest. Gregor is 11, maybe 12 years old. Already he towers over grown men. Already servants have learned to fear him. His younger brother Sandor, barely 6 or 7, still believes in the stories. Knights are heroes. Brothers protect each other. The world makes sense. A woodcarver arrives in the village near the keep, hoping to establish his trade. Like many craftsmen seeking noble patronage, he brings gifts to curry favor with the local lord. For the Clegane boys, he crafts beautiful toys. Gregor receives a wooden knight, perfectly jointed and painted with exquisite detail. The craftsmanship is remarkable. Every piece moves. The tiny sword fits in the tiny hand. It's a work of art. Gregor looks at it once, maybe twice, then tosses it aside. He's already obsessed with real combat, real weapons, real violence. A toy holds no interest for a boy who dreams only of killing. But for young Sandor, that wooden knight becomes everything. He's fascinated by the idea of knighthood, by honor and chivalry, and all the songs about brave heroes. When he sees his brother's discarded toy, desire overwhelms caution. He knows he shouldn't touch it. He knows Gregor's temper, but the toy is just sitting there, forgotten and beautiful. Sandor picks it up, his small hands carefully moving the joints, making the tiny knight bow and fight imaginary battles. For a few precious moments, he's lost in the fantasy. Then, Gregor walks into the room. There's no warning, no words, no chance for explanation or apology. Gregor sees his younger brother holding his property, and something inside him simply snaps. He crosses the room in 3 massive strides. His hand, already huge and powerful, grabs Sandor by the hair. The little boy barely has time to scream before his face is shoved directly into the brazier of burning coals. The sound Sandor makes isn't quite human. It's pure agony given voice. A child's scream that echoes through every hall of Clegane's Keep. The smell of burning flesh fills the room immediately, thick and nauseating. Gregor holds him there, his face pressed into the red-hot coals, and doesn't let go. Servants come running. 3 grown men grab Gregor, pulling with all their strength, and still it takes long seconds to drag him off. By the time Sandor's face leaves the brazier, the damage is catastrophic. The entire left side of his face has melted. Skin hangs in strips. The flesh underneath is exposed and weeping. His ear is partially gone. He'll carry these scars for the rest of his life. Gregor stands there breathing heavily, looking at his sobbing, burned brother with absolutely no emotion. No remorse, no horror at what he's done. He simply walks away as if nothing happened, as if he'd swatted a fly rather than permanently disfigured a child over a wooden toy. The maester comes quickly, bringing ointments and milk of the poppy for the pain. He does what he can, but burns like these don't heal cleanly. Sandor will survive, but he'll never look the same. Every time he sees his reflection, every time someone stares at his ruined face, he'll remember this moment. He'll remember his brother's hand in his hair, and the smell of his own flesh burning. But the physical scars aren't the worst of it. What comes next wounds even deeper. Their father fabricates a story. The official version: The one told to visiting lords and recorded in whatever records the Cleganes keep is simple. Sandor's bedding caught fire while he slept. A tragic accident could have happened to anyone. The boy is lucky to be alive. Sandor, barely 7 years old and traumatized beyond measure, is forced to live with this lie. Everyone who asks receives the same false story. Everyone pretends to believe it, and young Sandor learns a lesson that will shape his entire worldview. The powerful protect their own. Truth doesn't matter when it's inconvenient, and knights, those supposed paragons of virtue and honor, are just killers with better titles. His father never punishes Gregor, not even a scolding. The heir to Clegane's keep is too valuable to discipline over something as meaningless as a second son's face. The family's reputation matters more than justice. The continuation of their line matters more than truth. For Sandor, something breaks that can never be repaired. His relationship with his brother is shattered beyond any hope of reconciliation. His faith in knighthood dies before he's even old enough to squire. His trust in authority, in family, in the basic fairness of the world, all of it crumbles. He develops an intense fear of fire that will haunt him forever. But worse than the fear is the knowledge that monsters exist, that they wear human faces, and that everyone will protect them if it's convenient. Gregor, meanwhile, continues as if nothing happened. He keeps growing, keeps getting stronger, keeps showing the same casual cruelty to servants and animals. The incident with Sandor wasn't an aberration. It was simply the most visible example of what Gregor had always been. The servants at Clegane's keep start disappearing. Not many at first, just one here, one there. A maid who spilled wine, a stable boy who brought the wrong horse. They vanish without explanation, and nobody asks questions. The other servants learn quickly. Keep your head down, don't make mistakes, and never ever anger the young master. The Cleganes have an unnamed daughter, a sister to both boys. Sandor is too young to remember her clearly when she dies. The official cause is vague, the circumstances strange. Years later, Sandor will suspect Gregor killed her too. But there's no proof. There never is with Gregor. Just suspicion and fear, and bodies that disappear. This is who Gregor Clegane is at age 12. Not a boy driven to madness by pain. Not a victim of circumstance. A deliberate, calculating monster who inflicts suffering without hesitation and feels nothing afterward. The headaches are real. The pain is genuine. But plenty of people suffer without becoming evil. Plenty of people experience agony without choosing to inflict it on others. Gregor makes a choice every single time. He chooses violence. He chooses cruelty. He chooses to be what he is. And every time the world around him enables that choice by protecting him, excusing him, looking the other way. The burning of Sandor's face isn't the origin of the monster. It's just the moment when everyone else finally saw what Sandor already knew. His brother isn't human in any way that matters. He's something wearing a human shape, and he's only getting more dangerous as he grows. 4 years pass. Gregor is now 15, maybe 16 years old. He's grown to truly monstrous proportions, standing well over 7 feet tall and still growing. His strength has become legendary in the local area. He can bend iron bars with his hands. He can kill a warhorse with a single blow. He's not just strong for a human, he's strong in a way that defies nature. Sandor is around 10 or 11 now, his face a mass of scar tissue, his childhood innocence long dead. He watches his brother from a distance, seeing the violence escalate year by year. The servants who disappear, the animals tortured for entertainment, the casual brutality that defines every interaction Gregor has with the world. Then the deaths begin in earnest. First, their sister. The circumstances are never made clear. The official story is vague, mentioning illness or accident, nothing specific enough to investigate. She's buried quietly, Sandor is too young to remember her well, too young to really grieve. But years later, he'll look back and wonder. Gregor was there. Gregor is always there when people die at Clegane's keep. The headaches have gotten worse. Gregor drinks milk of the poppy constantly now, consuming amounts that would kill a normal person. The pain drives him into rages where he destroys everything in reach. Furniture splinters under his fists, walls crack, and anyone unlucky enough to be nearby learns to run. Then their father dies. The timing is remarkable. Gregor has just turned 16, the age when he can legally inherit a hunting accident, they say. The Lord of Clegane's keep, an experienced hunter who's ridden these lands his entire life, somehow dies in his own woods. The details are sparse, no witnesses, just a body brought back draped across a horse. Sandor doesn't believe it for a second. He knows what his brother is capable of. He's seen the cold calculation behind those eyes. Their father dying the exact moment Gregor can take his inheritance. That's not coincidence. That's murder. But proving it is impossible. Speaking about it is dangerous. So Sandor does the only thing he can. He leaves. The very day they bury their father, 10-year-old Sandor Clegane walks away from his ancestral home and never returns. He enters service with House Lannister as a sworn sword, finding protection in their household. It's the only way to escape his brother's reach. At 10 years old, he's already a killer. He makes his first kill wearing a helmet shaped like a hound's head, earning the nickname that will follow him forever. The Hound, the burned, cynical counterpart to his monstrous brother. Gregor, now master of Clegane's keep, doesn't even seem to notice his brother's departure. He's busy with other things, consolidating power, establishing his reputation, making absolutely certain that everyone in his territory understands that he's not just strong, he's untouchable. More servants vanish. The keep develops a reputation that makes staffing it nearly impossible. People would rather starve than work for the new young lord. The few who stay do so because they have no other choice, and they live in constant terror. Even the dogs won't enter certain rooms anymore. Animals know predators when they smell them. But Gregor's size and strength, for all their horror, have one useful application. He's devastatingly effective in combat. Not skilled, exactly. He has no finesse, no technique worth mentioning. But when you're 8 feet tall and can swing a greatsword like it's a toy, skill becomes secondary. He starts participating in local tournaments, and he dominates through sheer physical superiority. Tywin Lannister notices the Lord of Casterly Rock has a gift for recognizing useful tools, and Gregor Clegane is nothing if not useful. Absolutely loyal to House Lannister, willing to do anything without question, capable of violence that would make hardened soldiers vomit. Perfect for the kind of work that great lords need done but can't acknowledge publicly. So Tywin makes a decision. He requests that Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne, knight Gregor Clegane. The ceremony happens in 282, after conquest, roughly 1 year before Robert's rebellion will tear the Seven Kingdoms apart. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, the silver-haired prince who loves music and poetry, who's known for his honor and nobility, performs the ritual that makes Gregor Clegane a knight. It's considered a tremendous honor. Being knighted by the Prince of Dragonstone is the dream of every squire in Westeros. Men train their entire lives, hoping for such recognition. And it's given to a monster who's already killed his own family members and terrorized everyone around him. Gregor shows no appreciation, no understanding of the honor. He kneels because that's the ritual. He speaks the words because he's told to. But there's no reverence in him. Knighthood is just another title, another piece of armor for his reputation. He sees it as validation of his strength, nothing more. Sandor, serving House Lannister and watching from the edges of the ceremony, feels something inside him die completely. His brother, the monster who burned his face, is now a knight. The man who probably murdered their sister and definitely murdered their father is now Gregor Clegane, anointed by a prince. Every song about brave knights, every story about honor and chivalry, every ideal that Sandor once believed in turns to ash in that moment. Knights aren't heroes, they're killers who've learned to call themselves something prettier. The vows mean nothing, the ceremony means nothing. It's all just performance, all just lies, and Sandor will never forget that truth. He'll refuse knighthood for the rest of his life, even when it's offered. Being called Sir means nothing when his brother carries the same title. The irony is perfect and horrible. Prince Rhaegar, who knights Gregor in 282, has a wife named Elia Martell. He has 2 young children, Rhaenys and Aegon. 1 year later, during the sack of King's Landing, Gregor Clegane will murder both of those children and rape their mother to death. The man who granted him knighthood's entire family will be destroyed by the monster he elevated. But we're not there yet. For now, Gregor is simply Ser Gregor, a newly made knight with a reputation for excessive violence in tournaments. He kills horses deliberately when he's losing. He maims opponents who've yielded. He ignores every rule of civilized combat. Other knights begin to fear facing him, not because he's skilled, but because he's unpredictable and vicious. Tywin Lannister watches all of this and smiles. He's found his mad dog, his weapon for the work that requires absolute ruthlessness. Gregor is exactly what Tywin needs. Obedient, brutal, and stupid enough not to question orders. The perfect combination. The headaches continue to worsen. Gregor's consumption of milk of the poppy reaches staggering levels. The pain makes him more volatile, more unpredictable, more dangerous, but it also makes him more useful to Tywin. A man in constant pain has no mercy left in him. A man who lives in agony doesn't hesitate to inflict it on others. Everything is in place now. The monster has been knighted. He's been given status and protection. He's been positioned perfectly as Tywin Lannister's personal enforcer. All that's needed is the right opportunity, the right crisis to unleash him completely. That opportunity comes 1 year later, when Robert's rebellion reaches its climax and the Lannister army marches on King's Landing. The year is 283 after conquest. Robert's rebellion has raged for more than a year. The Mad King Aces sits on the Iron Throne, watching his kingdom crumble. Prince Rhaegar, the man who knighted Gregor Clegane, lies dead on the banks of the Trident, killed by Robert Baratheon's warhammer. The rebellion is essentially won. All that remains is taking the capital. Tywin Lannister has played both sides masterfully, waiting to see which way the war will turn. Now, with Robert's victory certain, he finally moves. The Lannister army, 12,000 strong, appears at the gates of King's Landing. They claim to come as friends, as loyalists to King Aerys. The Mad King, desperate and paranoid, debates letting them in. His hand advises against it. But Aerys, in his madness, chooses to believe. He orders the gates opened. The Lannister army pours into King's Landing, and the truth becomes immediately clear. This isn't rescue. This is betrayal. The sack begins. Lannister soldiers spread through the city, killing and looting. It's chaos, deliberate and calculated chaos, designed to prove Tywin's loyalty to Robert. The Lannisters need to demonstrate that they're fully committed to the new regime. They need to burn their bridges with the Targaryens so completely that Robert has no choice but to accept them as allies. Gregor Clegane and Ser Amory Lorch receive specific orders. They're to climb the walls of Maegor's Holdfast, the fortified keep within the Red Keep, where the royal family has barricaded themselves. Their mission is simple and horrifying. Kill the children, eliminate Rhaegar's heirs, make certain no Targaryen claimants survive. The 2 knights scale the walls. Inside, they find the royal apartments. Princess Elia Martell of Dorne, Rhaegar's wife, tries desperately to protect her children. Princess Rhaenys, 3 years old, hides under her father's bed. Baby Aegon, barely a year old, cries in his nursery. Gregor finds Rhaenys first. The little girl has crawled under the bed, pressed against the wall, hoping the monsters won't see her if she's very quiet and very still. Her father told her stories about brave knights who protect the innocent. She doesn't understand that sometimes the monsters wear the armor. Gregor drags her out by the ankle. Her screaming echoes through the halls. Then he stabs her. Not once, not twice, but 100 times. His dagger rises and falls, long after she's stopped moving. It's not killing, it's butchery. It's excess that serves no purpose except to demonstrate his absolute commitment to the brutality. Some accounts say Sir Tamari Lorch killed Rhaenys. The truth is probably that both men participated, but Gregor's involvement is certain, and his method is unmistakable. The level of violence, the sheer overkill, marks it as his work. Then he goes to the nursery. Baby Aegon is there, crying, terrified by the screams and the smell of blood. Gregor picks him up. This infant, barely walking, son of the prince who knighted him 1 year ago, and Gregor smashes the baby's head against the stone wall. The sound is sickening. Bone cracks. The crying stops instantly. But Gregor doesn't stop with one blow. He slams the infant's body against the wall again, then uses his armored fist to crush what's left of the skull. Baby Aegon's blood and brains splatter across the nursery walls, decorating them in crimson and grey. Elia Martell witnesses all of this. She sees her children murdered. She sees the man her husband honored reduce her babies to broken meat. And then Gregor turns his attention to her. What happens next is so brutal that even hardened soldiers who hear about it later feel sick. Gregor rapes Princess Elia, while her children's blood is still fresh on his hands and armor. Some accounts suggest he raped her beside their bodies. Others say he raped her during the murders, forcing her to watch as he violated her in every possible way. When he's finished, he kills her the same way he killed her infant son. His massive hands close around her skull and squeeze. Princess Elia of Dorne, known for her beauty and gentleness, dies with her face crushed beyond recognition, her skull fragments driven into her brain. The bodies are wrapped in crimson Lannister cloaks. Tywin personally presents them to Robert Baratheon as proof of Lannister loyalty. Look what we did for you. Look how thoroughly we've committed to your cause. We've murdered children and their mother, and we've done it in your name. Robert Baratheon, fresh from his triumph at the Trident, looks at the bundles and turns away. He's horrified, but he accepts it. He needs the Lannister gold, the Lannister army, the Lannister support, so he says nothing. He lets it stand. Ned Stark is there too, and he's not quiet. The Warden of the North looks at those wrapped bodies and sees exactly what they are: murder, war crime. The killing of babies and their mother. He argues furiously that Tywin and Gregor should face justice, that you can't build a new kingdom on the corpses of children, that this is wrong, fundamentally and completely wrong. The quarrel nearly destroys Robert and Ned's friendship. Jon Arryn, the old lord who fostered both of them, has to mediate. In the end, Ned leaves King's Landing in disgust. Robert allows the murders to stand, and Gregor Clegane, who raped and murdered a princess and killed 2 royal children, faces no consequences whatsoever. But the consequences ripple outward anyway. In Dorne, House Martell learns what happened to Elia and her children. Prince Doran, her brother, files the information away for future use. Prince Oberyn, her other brother, swears vengeance. The details of Elia's death spread through Dorne like wildfire. The rape, the crushed skull, the butchered babies. Dorne's hatred for House Lannister becomes permanent and absolute. 17 years later, Oberyn Martell will travel to King's Landing specifically to face Gregor Clegane. He'll coat his spear in poison and fight the Mountain in single combat. He'll demand a confession, demand that Gregor admit publicly what he did to Alia, and he'll die for it, but not before hearing those words, not before making Gregor confess his sins in front of the entire court. But that's still years away. For now, Gregor simply returns to the Westerlands as a war hero. He participated in the sack of King's Landing. He helped secure the throne for Robert. He proved his absolute loyalty to House Lannister. Tywin is pleased. Robert is king. And 3 corpses, 2 of them children, are buried quietly while everyone pretends the method of their deaths doesn't matter. Gregor himself shows no emotion about any of it. No remorse, no pride, no recognition of the enormity of what he's done. Following orders and murdering children are the same to him. Both are just tasks to complete. The rape was probably pleasure. The killing was certainly satisfaction. But there's no deeper thought behind any of it. He did what he was told. He did what he wanted. And now it's done. The most damning part is how thoroughly the system protects him. He's not arrested. He's not tried. He's not even officially condemned. Everyone knows what happened. Everyone knows who did it. But Gregor Clegane keeps his knighthood, keeps his lands, keeps his position, and returns home to continue terrorizing his servants and lands. He is 17 years old, officially a knight, and already responsible for some of the worst atrocities in recent Westerosi history, and he's just getting started. The years following Robert's rebellion pass with an eerie quiet at Clegane's Keep between 283 and 298. After conquest, roughly 15 years go by, where Gregor operates in the shadows, his reputation growing darker with each passing season. The wars are over. The realm is at peace, but peace doesn't change what Gregor Clegane is. He returns to the Westerlands with blood on his hands and absolutely no consequences following him home. The sack of King's Landing made him infamous in certain circles, whispered about in Dorne and the Reach, but in Lannister territory he's simply their lord's most effective enforcer. Tywin values him too much to allow any real scrutiny. The mad dog of Casterly Rock, some call him, though never to his face. The servants at Clegane's Keep learn new levels of terror during these years. Employment there becomes something people avoid, unless they're truly desperate. The keep develops a reputation that spreads through the local villages like disease. Work there if you have no other choice, but understand that you might not come home. The disappearances become systematic. A young maid spills wine during dinner. She's never seen again. A stable boy brings the wrong horse. He vanishes overnight. A cook oversalts the meat. The kitchen staff finds blood on the stones the next morning, but no body. Gregor kills for infractions so minor they barely qualify as mistakes. He kills when he's in pain, which is constantly. He kills when he's drunk or high on milk of the poppy. Sometimes he just kills because the person is there. Nobody investigates. The local authorities are too afraid. Tywin Lannister certainly won't allow questions about his most useful weapon. The families of the missing learn to grieve in silence. Speaking out means joining the disappeared. Even the hounds at Clegane's Keep, bred and trained for generations, refuse to enter certain parts of the castle. Animals possess an instinct for danger that humans sometimes lack. The dogs smell death in those halls, and they won't cross the threshold, no matter how their handlers command them. Then there are the wives. 3 of them over the years, 3 separate women married to Gregor Clegane, and all 3 dead under circumstances that stretch credibility to breaking. The first wife comes shortly after the war. Her name is lost to history, recorded nowhere that survives. An arranged marriage, probably to some minor house, looking to elevate themselves through connection to Lannister bannermen. She dies within a year. The official cause is vague. Illness, perhaps. An accident. Nobody looks too closely. Her family, if they suspect, keeps quiet. What can they do against a man protected by Tywin Lannister? The second wife follows a few years later. Another nameless woman, another arranged match. This one lasts slightly longer, but the servants whisper about screams at night, about bruises seen on her arms, about the way she flinches when Gregor enters a room. When she dies, rumors speak of beatings, of abuse that finally went too far. Her body shows signs of trauma, but again no investigation, no justice. Just another funeral and another empty place at the high table. The third wife simply disappears. One day she's there, the next she's gone. No body is ever found. No explanation is ever given. The servants know better than to ask. Gregor says nothing about it. She's just gone, erased as if she never existed. Most assume he killed her and disposed of the remains somewhere in the vast lands around Clegane's keep. A forest, a well, a deep ravine. The territory offers plenty of places to hide a body. 3 wives in 15 years, all dead. The pattern is unmistakable, but proving murder when the suspect is untouchable becomes an exercise in futility. Who will testify against Gregor Clegane? Who will risk becoming another disappearance? During these years of relative peace, Gregor still serves House Lannister when called upon. Occasional work along the Riverlands border keeps his skills sharp. Minor raids, intimidation missions, the kind of dirty work that great houses need done, but can't officially acknowledge. Always villages without strong defenses, always civilians who can't fight back. Tywin keeps him partially restrained during peacetime, leashing the mad dog just enough to avoid provoking open war, but letting him loose enough to maintain fear. Gregor attracts followers during these years. Not friends, he's incapable of friendship, but men who share his appetites for cruelty. They gather around him like flies on carrion. Dunson, who enjoys killing a bit too much. Polliver, who takes trophies from his victims. Raff the Sweetling, whose nickname mocks the violence he inflicts on women. Chiswick, who laughs while others suffer. These men become the core of what will later be known as the Mountain's Men, a band of soldiers who follow Gregor, not out of loyalty, but because he allows them to be what they truly are. Tywin understands exactly what he has in Gregor Clegane. During a conversation years later, with his son Tyrion, he'll explain it with characteristic bluntness. Some tools are made for dark work. You don't use a hammer to paint a portrait. You don't use Gregor Clegane for tasks requiring subtlety or mercy. But when you need someone to deliver a message written in blood and fire, when you need terror incarnate, Gregor serves his purpose perfectly. It's a symbiotic relationship. Tywin provides protection and legitimacy. Gregor provides violence without question or limit. Neither man suffers from an excess of conscience. Neither man loses sleep over the bodies left behind. The physical toll on Gregor accelerates during these years. By his late 20s and early 30s, the headaches have become unbearable. He consumes milk of the poppy in quantities that would kill lesser men. The pain drives him into rages where he destroys everything within reach. Furniture splinters. Doors crack off hinges. Anyone nearby learns to run or die. Modern observers might recognize the symptoms. Gigantism caused by a pituitary tumor pressing on the brain. Chronic pain from bones growing too fast for the body to support. Hormonal imbalances affecting mood and impulse control. Medieval Westeros just sees a giant in constant agony, self-medicating with opiates, growing more dangerous as the years pass. But here's what matters. Plenty of people suffer from medical conditions. Plenty of people live with chronic pain. They don't all become monsters. They don't all murder servants and rape wives and terrorize everyone around them. The pain explains some of Gregor's volatility. It doesn't excuse any of his choices. He participates in the suppression of Greyjoy's rebellion in 289 after conquest, adding more battlefield experience to his reputation. The Ironborn, fierce as they are, learn to fear the mountain. Stories spread about what he does to prisoners, about villagers on pike that burn a little too thoroughly, about Ironborn warriors who surrender and are never seen again. By 298, after conquest, Gregor Clegane is approximately 32 years old. He's reached peak physical condition despite his deteriorating health. Decades of violence and cruelty lie behind him. Hundreds of victims, most unnamed and forgotten, mark his path through these years, and he's never faced meaningful consequences for any of it. The system that created him, that elevated him, that protects him, continues to function perfectly. He's a useful tool to House Lannister. He's obedient to Tywin's commands. He's exactly what he was designed to be. All that's needed now is the right crisis, the right war, to unleash him completely on a scale that will make his previous atrocities look restrained. That crisis comes when a Stark woman captures a Lannister son, and Tywin decides to send a very particular message to the North and Riverlands. But before that war begins, Gregor makes one more public appearance that reveals his nature to the entire capital. One more display of violence that shows everyone exactly what kind of knight wears the title said. King's Landing, 298 after conquest. The city fills with knights and nobles from across the Seven Kingdoms, gathering for a tourney celebrating Lord Eddard Stark's appointment as Hand of the King. It's meant to be a display of chivalry, skill, and honor. Instead, it becomes something much darker. Gregor Clegane arrives at the capital riding the largest, most vicious stallion anyone has ever seen. The horse alone weighs more than 2 normal destriers. It has to, just to carry Gregor's weight. The crowds part as he rides through, not out of respect but out of genuine fear. He towers over everyone, even mounted men. His armor is so thick and heavy that a normal knight couldn't walk in it, let alone fight. The sight of him inspires awe and horror in equal measure. Small folk stare, children hide behind their parents. Even experienced soldiers feel their instincts screaming danger. This isn't a man. This is something else wearing a man's shape. The early rounds of the tourney showcase Gregor's style perfectly. No finesse, no technique worth mentioning. Just overwhelming, brutal power. He charges at opponents like a battering ram. His great sword, which he wields one-handed despite its 6-foot length, smashes through defenses rather than working around them. When he connects, shields explode into splinters, armor crumples, bones break. But it's what he does to the horses that really disturbs the noble spectators. When he's losing a joust, when an opponent has gotten the better of him, Gregor deliberately targets their mount. His lance drops from the opposing knight to the horse beneath. He kills the animals out of spite, out of rage at being bested. It's dishonorable even by generous standards. It's wasteful and cruel, and nobody stops him because nobody wants to be the one to try. Then comes his second joust of the day. His opponent is Sir Hugh of the Vale, a young man recently knighted. Hugh is proud of his new status, eager to prove himself. He's also made a fatal mistake that Gregor notices immediately. His gorget, the armor protecting his throat, isn't fastened properly. Maybe the squire rushed. Maybe Hugh didn't check carefully enough. Either way, there's a gap. The knights lower their lances. They charge, and Gregor's lance, rather than striking Hugh's shield or breastplate as it should, rides up. It slides perfectly into the gap at Hugh's throat. The crowd watches in horror as the wooden lance pierces flesh and windpipe. Hugh's lance strikes Gregor's shield harmlessly. Gregor's lance kills him. Hugh falls from his horse choking on his own blood, drowning in it as the tourney field turns red around him. He dies within minutes, clutching at the wound, eyes wide with shock and pain. The maesters can do nothing. The crowd sits in stunned silence. Later, Sandor Clegane will tell the truth to anyone willing to listen. Gregor saw the poorly fastened gorget. He aimed for it deliberately. This wasn't an accident of the joust. This was murder disguised as sport. But who will accuse a knight of such dishonor based on his estranged brother's word? So Hugh's death is ruled a tragic accident, and Gregor continues to the next round. His final opponent is Sir Loras Tyrell, the Knight of Flowers, beloved by the small folk, and known for his beauty and skill. Loras is everything Gregor isn't. Young, handsome, graceful, actually honorable. The crowd adores him. When he faces the mountain, they're cheering for him to win. Loras knows he can't match Gregor's strength. Nobody can. So he uses his mind instead. He chooses to ride a mare in heat to the joust, and his squires make certain Gregor's massive stallion can smell her. The result is predictable. Gregor's horse, driven wild by instinct, becomes uncontrollable. It rears and shies, fighting against the reins. Gregor, for all his strength, can't compensate for a mount that won't obey. The horses charge. Loras's lance strikes true. Gregor, unable to control his stallion, takes the hit off balance, and for the first time in his career, the mountain that rides falls from his horse. The crowd erupts. They're cheering, laughing, celebrating the giant's humiliation. Gregor crashes to the ground in his massive armor, the impact shaking the tourney field. Loras rides past in triumph, basking in the adulation. It's perfect, it's glorious, it's everything a tourney should be. Then Gregor stands up, and everyone remembers what he is. The rage that consumes him isn't normal anger. It's beyond fury, beyond thought, beyond anything resembling human emotion. He draws his greatsword, that massive blade most men can barely lift, and swings it in one smooth motion. The blow takes his stallion's head clean off. The horse's head flies through the air, trailing blood. The body collapses, still twitching. Blood sprays across the sand in great fountains. The crowd's cheers turn to screams. Loras, still mounted, realizes his danger too late. Gregor charges at him with the sword raised, fully intending to kill the Knight of Flowers in front of the king and the entire court. He'll murder an unarmed knight who just defeated him fairly, and he doesn't care who sees it. Loras's courser rears in panic. He's thrown from the saddle, hitting the ground hard. Gregor looms over him, sword raised for a killing blow, and then Sandor Clegane steps between them. The hound draws his own sword and faces his brother for the first time in years. The brothers circle each other, and the crowd watches two Cleganes about to fight to the death. Sandor knows Gregor's style intimately. He's spent his whole life watching his brother kill. He fights defensively, blocking and dodging, trying to survive rather than win. Their swords clash with tremendous force. Each blow from Gregor could split a man in half. Each block from Sandor barely stops the massive blade. They're not sparring. This isn't practice. Both brothers are trying to kill each other, and everyone watching knows it. The air fills with the sound of steel on steel, grunting with effort, boots sliding in blood-soaked sand. King Robert Baratheon finally roars from his seat. "Stop this madness in the name of your king." The command cuts through Gregor's rage just enough. He stops, breathing like a winded bull, glaring at Sandor with pure hatred. For a moment it seems he might disobey the king himself. Then he lowers his sword, drops it in the dirt, and walks away. He leaves the tawny grounds in disgrace, still consumed by fury, the crowds parting before him like he's plague incarnate. Loras, shaken but alive, yields the final tilt to Sandor in gratitude for saving his life. The hound accepts the purse and the victory. The small folk, who watched a brother save a stranger from another brother, shift their opinion of Sandor Clegane. Maybe the scarred, cynical man has more honor than the anointed knight. But the incident reveals something crucial to everyone present. Gregor Clegane, Knight of the Realm, cannot control himself. His rage overrides everything, including his sense of self-preservation. He was willing to murder Loras Tyrell, a high-born knight of a powerful house in front of the king. He was willing to kill his own brother when Sandor intervened, and he only stopped because the king himself commanded it. The nobles of King's Landing whisper about what they've seen. This is what the Lannisters keep on a leash. This is the man Tywin sends to do his dirty work. The knowledge spreads through the court like poison. Some are horrified. Others are impressed by Tywin's ruthlessness in employing such a weapon. Gregor rides back to the Westerlands that same day, still seething with humiliation. He's been defeated publicly, made to look foolish in front of the kingdom's elite. Worse, he was stopped by his burned, scarred little brother. The rage has nowhere to go. It builds and builds, a storm waiting for a target. Within months, that target appears. Catelyn Stark captures Tyrion Lannister. Tywin needs to respond. And when Tywin wants to send a message written in blood and fire, there's only one man he calls. The leash is about to come off completely. Late 298. After conquest, Catelyn Stark, acting on information from Littlefinger, seizes Tyrion Lannister at an inn on the King's Road. She accuses him of attempted murder against her son Bran. She takes him to the Eyrie to face trial, and in doing so, she gives Tywin Lannister exactly the justification he's been waiting for. Tywin doesn't care whether Tyrion is guilty or innocent. His son has been taken by a Stark, accused publicly, humiliated. The insult to House Lannister cannot stand. But Tywin is too clever to respond with direct war. Not yet. Instead, he chooses a method that allows him deniability while sending an unmistakable message. He summons Gregor Clegane to Casterly Rock and gives him the simplest of orders: raid the Riverlands, burn their villages, slaughter their people, make the Starks and Tullys bleed for their insult, and do it all while maintaining the fiction that you're acting as a rogue knight, not a Lannister bannerman following orders. For Gregor, this is permission to be what he's always been, without any restraint whatsoever. The leash isn't just loosened, it's removed entirely. Everything he's done in the shadows at Clegane's Keep, he can now do in broad daylight across an entire region. Tywin has unleashed his mad dog, and the Riverlands will drown in blood. Gregor gathers his men, a collection of cruel soldiers who've learned his methods over the years. Dunsen, Polliver, Raff, the Sweetling, Chiswick, and others whose names will become synonymous with atrocity. They cross into the Riverlands and begin what can only be called systematic terror. The village of Shira burns first. It's a small farming community, maybe 100 people total. No soldiers, no defenses worth mentioning. Gregor's men arrive at dawn and begin killing immediately. They don't demand surrender. They don't make speeches. They just start murdering everyone they find. Men are cut down in their fields. Women are raped repeatedly, then killed or left for dead. Children are murdered in front of their parents. Parents murdered in front of their children. The order doesn't matter. The cruelty is the point. Buildings are set ablaze with families still inside. Those who try to flee are run down by mounted soldiers and butchered. By the time the sun sets, Shira doesn't exist anymore. Every building is smoking ruins. Every resident is dead or dying. The crops are burned. The livestock is slaughtered. Even the wells are poisoned so nobody can return and rebuild. It's not warfare. It's extermination. Wendish Town suffers the same fate days later. Then the Mummers Ford, named for a bridge where traveling players once performed. Each village follows the same pattern: complete destruction. No survivors when possible. Maximum terror for any who escape. Gregor's men compete to commit the worst atrocities, encouraged by their leader's example. The survivors, those few who manage to flee, carry tales of horror south. They describe the giant knight and his men, the 3 hounds on yellow field, the systematic brutality, the way they killed without reason or mercy. Refugees flood toward King's Landing, overwhelming the city's ability to handle them, spreading their stories to anyone who'll listen. Lord Eddard Stark, serving as Hand of the King while Robert is off hunting, receives delegations of these refugees. They petition him for justice, for protection, for someone to stop the monster ravaging their homeland. Ned listens to their stories, and his northern honor demands action. Littlefinger identifies the 3 hounds' sigil as belonging to House Clegane. Ned, who was there at the sack of King's Landing, who argued for Gregor's execution after the murder of the Targaryen children, sees Tywin's hand in this immediately, but he needs to respond properly, within the law. He summons the throne room and makes a formal declaration. In the name of King Robert, he strips Gregor Clegane of all ranks, titles, lands, and holdings. He denounces him as a false knight and sentences him to death. He commands Lord Beric Dondarrion to take 100 men, ride to the Riverlands, and bring Gregor Clegane to justice. If Gregor resists, Beric is authorized to kill him on sight. It's the right thing to do. It's the lawful thing to do. It's also exactly what Tywin wants. Ned has just committed crown forces against a Lannister bannerman, giving Tywin the justification he needs for open conflict. But Beric Dondarrion rides north with his men, young and eager for glory. He's a good man, an honorable knight, exactly the kind of person who believes justice matters. He has no idea he's riding into a trap. Gregor knows they're coming. He has more men, better position, and none of Beric's scruples about fair fighting. The battle at Mummer's Ford is barely a battle at all. It's an ambush and a massacre. Gregor's force surrounds Beric's men and tears them apart. The killing is efficient and brutal. Beric Dondarrion himself dies in the fighting, run through by a Lannister sword. Most of his 100 men die with him. The few who survive scatter into the wilderness. Except Beric doesn't stay dead. Horus of Murs, a red priest riding with the expedition, performs a desperate prayer over his friend's body. The Lord of Light answers. Beric gasps back to life, returned from death for a purpose. He and the survivors go underground, forming what will become the Brotherhood without banners. But that's a story that unfolds over months. For now, all that matters is that Ned's attempt at justice has failed completely. Gregor continues his campaign unopposed. The raids intensify. Village after village burns. The death toll climbs into the hundreds, then the thousands. This isn't military strategy. It's state-sponsored terrorism. Tywin is using Gregor to make the Riverlands uninhabitable, to break the Tully's power base, to demonstrate what happens when you cross House Lannister. The War of the Five Kings begins in earnest. Robb Stark calls his banners to rescue his father in King's Landing. Riverland's lords rally to defend their people. The conflict that will tear the Seven Kingdoms apart for years starts here, with Gregor Clegane's campaign of terror. Tywin gives Gregor command of Harrenhal, the massive ruined castle in the Riverlands. It's strategically located to control the region, large enough to garrison significant forces, and isolated enough that what happens there can stay hidden. Gregor moves in with his men and transforms the ancient fortress into his personal kingdom of nightmares. Prisoners taken during raids are brought to Harrenhal. Local smallfolk are pressed into service, forced to work in the castle under threat of death, and Gregor establishes a routine of horror that will traumatize everyone who witnesses it. The torture, the executions, the systematic cruelty, all of it happens daily in Harrenhal's yards and halls. This is what Gregor Clegane does when given free rein. This is what Tywin Lannister's mad dog looks like off the leash. And this is only the beginning of what will happen at Harrenhal under the Mountain's rule. Harrenhal stands as the largest castle in the Seven Kingdoms, a monument to hubris and flame. Built by Harren the Black before Aegon's conquest, it was melted and twisted by dragonfire on the day of its completion. The towers lean at unnatural angles. The stones are blackened and fused. Even 300 years later, the place carries a cursed reputation. People say everyone who holds Harrenhal meets a bad end. Gregor Clegane makes it worse. He claims the Kingspire Tower for himself, the tallest of Harrenhal's 5 massive towers. His men spread throughout the castle, occupying the enormous spaces that were built to house a king's household. The castle can hold thousands. Gregor's force numbers in the hundreds, but they fill it with screaming. The daily routine begins at dawn. Prisoners are dragged into the castle yard. Those unfortunate souls captured during raids or rounded up from nearby villages on suspicion of helping the Brotherhood without banners. They're lined up against the blood-stained walls while Gregor's men decide how today's entertainment will proceed. Sometimes it's simple execution, a sword through the heart, a blade across the throat, quick deaths for those who've confessed or those who have nothing useful to say. But simple executions are rare. Gregor's men have developed tastes for more elaborate methods, encouraged by their commander's example and his complete indifference to suffering. The bear pit sees frequent use. There's a massive brown bear kept deliberately starved in a pit beneath the castle. Prisoners are thrown down to it, unarmed and terrified, while soldiers gather above to watch and wager. The bear tears them apart slowly. The screaming echoes through Harrenhal's halls for what feels like hours. Sometimes the bear plays with its victims first, batting them around like toys before finally killing them. Burning is another favorite. Stakes are set up in the yard, prisoners tied to them, and fires lit beneath their feet. The smell of burning flesh becomes so common that the servants stop noticing it. The screams, though, those never become background noise. Each person burns differently, screams differently, dies differently. The soldiers watch with the casual interest of men observing weather. Then there's the tickler. He's a thin man, insect-like in his persistence, with dead eyes and careful hands. He's Gregor's personal interrogator, assigned to extract information from prisoners. But the information isn't really the point. The tickler asks the same questions over and over, even after his victims are clearly broken, clearly telling everything they know, clearly begging for death. His voice is soft, almost gentle, as he works. Where is Lord Beric? How many men does he have? Where does the Brotherhood hide? Where is the gold? How much silver did you have? The questions repeat in an endless loop, while his tools do their work. Knives, pliers, hot irons, needles. He works methodically without passion or anger. It's just his job. Arya Stark arrives at Harrenhal as a prisoner, though nobody recognizes her. She's been traveling with Yoren's Night's Watch recruits when they were attacked by Lannister men. She's disguised as a peasant boy, first calling herself Ari, then Weasel, answering to whatever name keeps her invisible and alive. She's brought to Harrenhal with Gendry and Hot Pie, 2 other children trying to survive in a world that wants them dead. She becomes a servant, one of many anonymous figures who clean and cook, and try desperately not to be noticed. Servants who draw attention at Harrenhal don't remain servants for long. They become entertainment in the yard, or bodies thrown to the dogs. So Arya keeps her head down, does her work, and watches everything with those sharp, stark eyes. What she witnesses over the following months will reshape her completely. She's 9 years old, maybe 10, and she's watching people tortured to death daily. She's seeing her father's men, soldiers who fought for House Stark, broken and killed in front of her. She's powerless to help them, forced to serve the very men who are destroying everything she loves. The Mountain himself is a constant presence, massive and terrifying. Arya watches him from the corners of rooms, from behind doorways, anywhere she can observe without being observed. She sees his rages when the headaches overwhelm him. Furniture explodes under his fists. Servants are killed for being in his line of sight. Once she watches him beat a man to death with his bare hands because the man brought him wine instead of ale. She sees the casual cruelty of his soldiers too. Polliver, who will later steal Needle from her at the inn, laughing as prisoners beg for mercy. Wrath the Sweetling, whose nickname is a cruel joke, dragging women into dark corners. Dunsen, wearing a helm he took from a boy named Gendry, participating in every torture session with obvious enjoyment. Chiswick, telling stories about raping a brewer's daughter while his friends laugh. Every night before sleep, Arya begins reciting names. It starts as a way to remember who she is, to hold on to her identity when everything else has been stripped away. But it transforms into something else. A prayer, a promise, a list of people who need to die. Gregor Clegane, the Tickler, Polliver, Chiswick, Wrath the Sweetling, Dunsen. The list grows as she witnesses more atrocities, but Gregor is always first. The mountain that rides is the top of her kill list, the primary target of her rage. She's just a child, barely tall enough to reach a grown man's chest, but she promises herself that someday, somehow, she'll make him pay for what he's done. The Brotherhood without banners becomes Gregor's obsession during this period. Beric Dondarrion, resurrected from death, leads a guerrilla resistance throughout the Riverlands. They strike at Lannister supply lines, free prisoners, ambush patrol groups, then vanish into the forests and hills. They're ghosts, impossible to pin down, and they're making Gregor look foolish. For a man whose entire reputation is built on being unstoppable, the Brotherhood's success infuriates him beyond reason. He sends patrols to find them. They don't return. He sets ambushes. The Brotherhood somehow knows and avoids them. He offers rewards for information. The small folk would rather die than betray the men protecting them. The Tickler's questions reflect this obsession. Where is Lord Beric becomes the primary inquiry, asked of every prisoner, regardless of whether they could possibly know. Old men who've never left their villages are tortured for information they don't have. Women who've never heard of the Brotherhood are broken on the rack while the Tickler asks his gentle questions. Children are threatened, hurt, killed, all to find a ghost army that refuses to be found. Gregor takes his frustration out on whoever's available. The torture sessions intensify. The executions become more frequent. Harrenhal transforms from a prison into an abattoir. Blood permanently stains the courtyard stones. The dogs that are fed on corpses become aggressive and wild. The servants develop a hollow look, the expression of people who've seen too much and lost the capacity for normal emotion. Jaqen H'ghar, a mysterious prisoner who arrived with Arya, offers her an opportunity. He's a faceless man from Braavos, though she doesn't understand what that means yet. He owes her 3 deaths because she saved him from a burning wagon. She can name anyone, and Jaqen will kill them. Anyone at all. She's tempted to name Gregor. Immediately, end the nightmare with one word. But she's smart enough to realize that killing Gregor openly might not help her escape. So she uses her deaths strategically, killing guards and officers, creating chaos that will allow her to flee. Jaqen helps her escape Harrenhal, but not before she's thoroughly traumatized by her time there. The memories will follow her across Essos to Braavos, through her training with the Faceless Men, into her eventual return to Westeros. She'll never forget the screaming in Harrenhal's yards. She'll never forget the Tickler's soft voice asking his terrible questions, and she'll never forget the mountain, the source of all that suffering, the monster who turned an ancient castle into hell on earth. Then Roose Bolton arrives. Lord Bolton, who's already planning his betrayal of Robb Stark, though nobody knows it yet, takes command of Harrenhal. Tywin assigns Gregor to field operations, sending him back to raiding and open combat. Gregor leaves behind a castle full of traumatized survivors and a reputation that ensures Harrenhal's cursed status for another generation. The servants who survive their time under Gregor's rule carry the scars forever. Some go mad. Some flee the Riverlands entirely, trying to escape even the memory of what they witnessed. The few who stay spread stories that grow in the telling, tales of torture and murder that sound too extreme to be true but aren't exaggerated at all. Harrenhal, under Gregor Clegane, becomes legendary for all the wrong reasons. People speak of it in whispers, the way they speak of the most haunted places, and they're right to whisper. Hundreds died there during his occupation. Hundreds more were broken in body or spirit. The ancient stones, already stained by dragonfire, absorb new layers of blood and suffering. But the war continues. Gregor returns to the field, still Tywin's mad dog, still killing without restraint. The Riverlands continue to burn under his campaign, and far to the south, in Dorne, Prince Oberyn Martell hears reports of Gregor's renewed atrocities and adds them to his list of grievances. The mountain has been operating with impunity for 17 years since the sack of King's Landing. 17 years of rape, murder, torture, and terror. 17 years without meaningful consequences. But time is running out, though Gregor doesn't know it yet. In King's Landing, events are unfolding that will finally bring him face to face with justice. Or something close to it. King's Landing, 300 after conquest. The capital is in chaos. Young King Joffrey is dead, poisoned at his own wedding feast. Tyrion Lannister stands accused of the murder. The trial proceeds with theatrical cruelty, witness after witness testifying against the dwarf, while Tywin orchestrates the outcome from his position as Hand. Then Oberyn Martell arrives in the city, and everything changes. Prince Oberyn is brother to Elia Martell, the woman Gregor raped and murdered 17 years ago during the sack of King's Landing. He spent nearly 2 decades thinking about revenge, planning it, waiting for the perfect opportunity. He's studied poisons across Essos. He's honed his combat skills with spear and blade. He's prepared himself mentally and physically for one specific purpose: killing Gregor Clegane. Oberyn is everything. Gregor isn't. Educated, cultured, passionate about life and pleasure. He writes poetry. He's traveled the world. He's known for his appetites, his affairs with both men and women, his love of wine and conversation. But beneath the hedonistic exterior lies a core of pure vengeance. The memory of his sister drives everything he does. When Oberyn was younger, he traveled to King's Landing for Elia's wedding to Prince Rhaegar. He watched his beloved sister marry into the royal family. He celebrated with her, happy that she'd found a match with one of the realm's most eligible princes. Then came Robert's rebellion. Then came the sack. Then came the news of what Gregor had done. The reports reached Dorne in fragments. At first, Elia is dead. Her children are dead. Then the details emerged. The rape, the crushed skull, the butchered babies. Oberyn learned every single detail of his sister's final moments, and each detail burned itself into his memory like a brand. For 17 years, Tywin Lannister has escaped consequences for ordering those murders. Gregor Clegane has lived free, protected, continuing to commit atrocities across the realm. Dorne has seethed with rage, unable to act because the Lannisters hold too much power. But Oberyn is patient. He knows the right moment will come. Tyrion's trial provides that moment. When Tyrion demands trial by combat, Oberyn sees his opportunity. Cersei immediately names Sir Gregor Clegane as her champion. It's the obvious choice. Gregor is undefeated in single combat. His size and strength make him nearly invincible. Tyrion seems doomed. Then Oberyn volunteers to be Tyrion's champion. The court reacts with shock. Why would a Prince of Dorne fight for Tyrion Lannister? Of all people. Tyrion himself is confused until Oberyn explains he's not fighting for Tyrion. He's fighting to face Gregor legally in a sanctioned trial by combat, where he can make the Mountain confess his crimes publicly before killing him. Oberyn tells Tyrion the story. He describes visiting King's Landing as a young man, seeing the throne room where his sister's corpse was presented, wrapped in a crimson cloak. He speaks about learning exactly what Gregor did to Ilya, the details that still wake him from sleep decades later. He explains his plan with frightening intensity. I will hear him confess before he dies. He will admit what he did to Ilya. He will admit who gave the order, and then I will have justice. Tyrion, knowing he's about to die regardless, agrees. What choice does he have? His brother Jaime can't fight for him. Nobody else has volunteered. If Oberyn wants to use this trial for revenge, Tyrion will take whatever chance that offers. Oberyn prepares carefully. His spear is his weapon of choice, and he coats it with manticore venom gathered during his travels through Essos. The poison is extraordinarily painful and invariably fatal. Every cut will deliver toxin into Gregor's bloodstream. Even if Oberyn loses the fight, Gregor will die screaming. It's a backup plan, a guarantee that both men might die, but neither will truly win. Oberyn has thought this through completely. He spent years preparing for this single combat. The day arrives. All of King's Landing turns out to watch. The trial by combat becomes a public spectacle, nobles and small folk alike cramming into every available viewing space. Tywin Lannister sits with young King Tommen, presiding over the trial. Cersei watches with absolute confidence. Tyrion sits in chains, his fate balanced on the edge of a blade. Ellaria Sand, Oberyn's paramour, takes her place among the Dornish delegation. She begs him not to do this, knowing how dangerous Gregor is. But Oberyn has waited 17 years. Nothing will stop him now. Gregor enters the arena first. 8 feet tall, over 400 pounds of muscle and armor, carrying a great sword that lesser men can barely lift. His armor is the thickest in the 7 kingdoms, every piece custom forged to protect his massive frame. He's consumed enormous quantities of milk of the poppy to dull the pain, enough to render a normal person unconscious. But Gregor isn't normal, and the drugs barely take the edge off his constant agony. Then Oberyn enters, and the contrast is stark. He's perhaps 5 feet 10 inches, lean and graceful, carrying a long spear and wearing relatively light armor. He looks like a child next to the Mountain. The crowd murmurs nervously. This seems like suicide. But Oberyn knows exactly what he's doing. Speed against strength, mobility against power, reach against mass. The spear gives him distance, allows him to strike without entering Gregor's killing range. The light armor lets him move, dodge, dance away from those devastating blows. The combat begins. Gregor charges like a bull, that massive sword swinging in arcs that would split a man in half. Oberyn glides aside, the blade missing by inches. He counters with a quick thrust that catches Gregor in the leg joint, cutting through the gap in his armor. First blood to the Viper. Elia Martell. Oberyn's voice rings across the arena. You raped her. Gregor doesn't respond, just attacks again. But he's slower now, the poison starting its work. Oberyn strikes again. Another cut, another dose of venom, then another. Each time he wounds Gregor, he shouts the accusations. You murdered her children. Slash across the chest, finding a seam in the armor. Say it, say her name. Cut to the arm, poison spreading through Gregor's bloodstream. The fight continues for long minutes. Oberyn is clearly winning. He's landed a dozen cuts while Gregor has hit nothing but air. The Mountain is slowing down, breathing heavily, sweating profusely inside his armor. The poison and the accumulated wounds are taking their toll. Oberyn severs Gregor's hamstring with a precise cut. The giant drops to one knee, unable to stand. The crowd begins to cheer. The Viper has done it. he's brought down the mountain. Oberyn circles his fallen opponent, still demanding confession. Who gave you the order? Say it was Tywin Lannister. He's staring at Tywin as he shouts, making sure everyone understands the accusation. Then he makes his fatal mistake. He approaches too close, convinced Gregor is beaten, focused on making him confess rather than finishing the kill. Oberyn is a step and a half away, spear raised, shouting his demands. Gregor moves with shocking speed for a wounded man. His arm sweeps out, catching Oberyn's legs. The Dornish prince crashes to the ground, his spear knocked away before he can recover. Gregor's massive weight is on top of him, pinning him completely. The crowd's cheers turn to screams of horror. Ellaria Sand's shriek rises above them all. Gregor's thumbs press into Oberyn's eye sockets. The viper screams, thrashing, trying desperately to escape. But Gregor weighs 3 times what he does, and there's no breaking that grip. Elia Martell. Gregor roars, his voice thick with pain and triumph. I killed her screaming whelp. The confession Oberyn wanted, delivered as Gregor's thumbs pushed deeper, gouging through Oberyn's eyes into his skull. Then I raped her. Blood streams down Oberyn's face from his destroyed eyes. His screaming reaches a pitch that doesn't sound human. Then I smashed her head in, like this. Gregor's hands close around Oberyn's skull and squeeze. The sound is sickeningly wet and final. Bone cracks. Blood and brain matter spray across the arena floor. Prince Oberyn Martell's skull collapses under the mountain's hands, exactly as Princess Elia's did 17 years before. Ellaria's screaming continues long after Oberyn stops. She'll never stop hearing it, never stop seeing that moment. It will haunt her for the rest of her life, driving her toward her own revenge that will eventually destroy her. Tyrion sits in shock, convicted by his champion's defeat, but at least Oberyn achieved part of his goal. Gregor confessed. Everyone heard it. The entire court heard the mountain admit to raping Elia and killing her children. The truth is finally public, undeniable, spoken by the monster himself. Then Gregor collapses. He staggers to his feet, tries to walk, and falls hard onto the blood-soaked sand. The manticore venom has saturated his system. His body is shutting down. He begins screaming, howling in agony as the poison does its work. Guards carry him from the arena while he thrashes and shrieks. Both champions have fallen. Gregor technically won, giving Cersei her victory, but he's dying. The poison ensures that nobody survives manticore venom once it's in the bloodstream. The screaming starts immediately and doesn't stop. Day and night, Gregor Clegane screams in the depths of the Red Keep. The sound echoes through every corridor, disturbing everyone who hears it. Grand Maester Pycelle examines him and declares the case hopeless. The poison is breaking down his body from the inside. He should already be dead. His size and constitution are fighting it, but that only prolongs the agony. This is justice of a sort. Not the clean justice Oberyn wanted, not the public execution Elia deserved, but justice nonetheless. Gregor Clegane is finally suffering consequences for his crimes, dying in unimaginable pain, his body betraying him the way he betrayed everyone who ever trusted him. Except he doesn't die. The screaming continues for days, and Cersei Lannister, desperate for a champion for her own upcoming trial, makes a decision that will transform Gregor into something even worse than he was. She summons Qyburn. The screaming has been going on for 3 days when Qyburn receives Cersei's summons. The sound permeates the Red Keep like a physical presence. Servants cover their ears. Guards request reassignment. Even the rats seem agitated by the constant howling from the dungeons where Gregor has been taken. Qyburn is a former maester, stripped of his chain by the Citadel for forbidden experiments. He studied at the Citadel like any maester, learning medicine and healing, but his curiosity led him down darker paths. He became fascinated with the nature of death itself. What separates the living from the dead? What if that boundary could be crossed? What if death was merely a technical problem, waiting for a solution? The Citadel discovered his experiments on living subjects and expelled him. But Qyburn's research continued privately, funded by those who valued results over ethics. By the time he enters Cersei's service, he's learned things that would make the Citadel's masters vomit. Cersei's request is simple: save Gregor Clegane. She needs a champion for her trial before the Faith. Gregor is the perfect candidate, unbeatable in combat. If he could somehow survive the poison. Tywin had actually ordered this before his death. Keep the mountain alive by any means necessary. He's too valuable to lose. Qyburn examines Gregor and finds a subject beyond his wildest dreams. The man is already dead by any reasonable standard. The poison has destroyed most of his internal organs. He's sustained by sheer size and stubbornness, hanging on to life through willpower alone. Any normal person would have died within an hour of poisoning. Gregor has lasted days, though what he's experiencing can't really be called living. The screaming is inhuman now. It's not just pain, though the pain is certainly beyond measure. It's the sound of a mind breaking, consciousness fragmenting under strain no human psyche was meant to endure. Gregor's voice has gone hoarse, cracked, barely recognizable as something that came from a throat. Qyburn makes his proposal to Cersei. He can save Gregor. After a fashion, the process will change him. He might not be quite the same as he was, but he'll live, he'll be strong, and he'll serve as her champion. Cersei, desperate and not particularly concerned with the details, agrees immediately. They move Gregor to the Black Cells, the deepest dungeons beneath the Red Keep. Down there, away from witnesses and oversight, Qyburn can work without interruption. He brings his equipment, his supplies, his carefully guarded books of forbidden knowledge, and he begins the experiment that will transform Gregor Clegane into something that shouldn't exist. The screaming continues for days, then, suddenly, it stops. Complete silence from the Black Cells. Guards assigned to the area report that the quiet is somehow worse than the noise. At least the screaming meant something was happening. The silence feels wrong, unnatural, like the calm before a storm. Weeks pass. Qyburn works alone, allowing nobody to enter his improvised laboratory. Strange smells occasionally drift up from below. Sickly sweet odors like rotting meat mixed with alchemical compounds. Guards report seeing Qyburn emerge occasionally to gather supplies, his robes stained with substances they don't want to identify. What exactly Qyburn does remains largely a mystery. He never explains his methods fully, and nobody who might object has the authority to stop him. But certain details emerge over time, pieced together from hints and observations. The manticore venom can't be cured, so Qyburn works around it. He preserves what can be preserved. He replaces what must be replaced. He uses techniques that mix medieval medicine with something darker, something that borders on blood magic or necromancy. The line between science and sorcery blurs in Qyburn's work. There's a theory, widely believed but never confirmed, that Qyburn removed Gregor's head, that he sent it to Dorne as proof of the mountain's death, satisfying their demands for justice while keeping the body intact for his experiments. A dwarf skull, similar in size if not in features, might have been placed inside Gregor's helmet later. It's grotesque to consider, but so is everything else about what Qyburn creates. Months pass. The War of the Five Kings continues. Cersei faces her walk of shame through King's Landing, forced to parade naked while the small folk pelt her with filth and abuse. She endures it because she knows what's waiting for her. She knows Qyburn has promised her a champion, something unstoppable, something that will destroy anyone who stands against her. When Cersei finally returns to the Red Keep after her humiliation, Qyburn presents his work. Standing in the throne room, silent and massive, is something wearing Sir Gregor Clegane's armor. 8 feet tall, broader than before, completely motionless until given a command. The helmet never comes off. The face, if there is a face, remains hidden. Qyburn calls him Sir Robert Strong, a name clearly chosen to honor the late King Robert while obscuring the creature's true identity. He explains that this knight has taken a holy vow of silence. He will not speak until all of Cersei's enemies are dead and evil has been driven from the realm. It's a convenient story that explains why the thing never talks, never eats, never seems to need rest or sustenance. The truth that everyone suspects but nobody speaks aloud is simpler. This isn't Gregor Clegane anymore. It's something Qyburn made from Gregor's corpse. A reanimated body, preserved through forbidden techniques, transformed into the perfect weapon. Sir Robert Strong becomes a member of the King's Guard, sworn to protect King Tommen and serve as the Queen Mother's personal champion. He wears the white cloak and armor of that ancient order, but there's nothing knightly about him. He's a moving corpse, an abomination, the ultimate perversion of everything knighthood is supposed to represent. His characteristics confirm that something is terribly wrong. He never removes his armor, not even his helmet. He never eats or drinks. He never sleeps. He never speaks, never makes any sound at all. He moves with mechanical precision when given orders but remains completely still otherwise, like a statue waiting to be animated. His strength exceeds even what Gregor possessed in life. During a demonstration, he crushes a man's head with one hand, the skull collapsing like an egg. He moves with terrifying speed, despite his size, and he seems completely immune to pain. When someone accidentally strikes him during training, the blade bounces off armor and flesh alike. He doesn't react at all. Jaime Lannister recently returned to King's Landing, tries to interact with his newest Kingsguard member. He asks questions, makes jokes, attempts to get any response. The Sir Robert Strong simply stares at him with whatever lies behind that helmet's eye slits. The silence is profoundly unnerving. Jaime leaves quickly, disturbed in a way that battle never made him feel. Kevan Lannister, serving as Hand after Tywin's death, voices concerns about Qyburn's creation. It's clearly wrong, clearly unnatural, clearly something that shouldn't exist. But Cersei needs her champion. The faith has grown powerful. Her trial approaches. She can't afford scruples about how her defender was made. So Sir Robert Strong stands guard outside Cersei's chambers, a silent colossus that frightens everyone who sees him. Servants give him wide berth. Other Kingsguard members avoid him. Even the bravest knights feel their instincts screaming danger when they're near him. The question that haunts everyone who knows the truth is whether any of Gregor Clegane's consciousness remains inside that armor. Is he aware of what's been done to him? Does he think, feel, experience anything? Or is it purely Qyburn's creation, a puppet made from a corpse with no thoughts or awareness at all? If Gregor's consciousness does remain, his existence is a punishment worse than any death, trapped in a body that doesn't need rest, food, or sleep, unable to speak, to scream, to express anything, forced to stand motionless for hours, days, waiting for commands. It would be the ultimate irony. The man who inflicted so much suffering, condemned to suffer in silence forever. But if there's no consciousness, if Qyburn truly killed whatever remained of Gregor's mind, then the mountain escaped justice after all. He died screaming in agony. Yes, but then he simply ended. No eternal punishment, no final reckoning, just death, followed by his corpse being used as raw material for something else. Nobody knows which is true. Qyburn isn't telling. Sir Robert Strong isn't talking. And Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, the monster who terrorized Westeros for 32 years, is either gone completely or trapped in a hell of his own making. Either way, his story has reached its conclusion. What comes next belongs to Sir Robert Strong, whatever that thing actually is. The mountain is dead. Long live the abomination that wears his corpse. The transformation of Gregor Clegane into Sir Robert Strong marks the end of one nightmare and the beginning of another. Whatever consciousness might exist inside that armor, whatever Qyburn created from the mountain's corpse, it serves Cersei Lannister now as her personal champion. The vow of silence provides convenient cover for something that probably can't speak anyway. Standing guard outside Cersei's chambers, this silent colossus frightens everyone who passes. Other Kingsguard members avoid interaction. Servants take longer routes to avoid walking near him. Even battle-hardened knights feel their instincts screaming danger in his presence. The white cloak and golden armor of the Kingsguard can't disguise what he truly represents, an abomination wearing the trappings of honor. The question that haunts those who know the truth cuts deeper than simple fear. Does any fragment of Gregor's awareness remain trapped inside that reanimated body? If consciousness persists, his existence becomes the ultimate irony. The man who inflicted endless suffering now experiences it himself, unable to speak, unable to rest, unable to die, frozen in place for hours without movement, following commands like a puppet. It would be justice of the cruelest kind. But if Qyburn truly destroyed whatever remained of Gregor's mind during his experiments, then the mountain escaped accountability after all. He died screaming from Oberyn's poison. Yes, but then simply ended. No eternal punishment, no final reckoning for thousands of murders. Just death followed by his corpse becoming raw material for something else entirely. Nobody knows which version is true. Qyburn keeps his secrets. Sir Robert Strong offers no answers. And Gregor Clegane, who terrorized Westeros for 3 decades, either found oblivion or discovered a hell beyond anything he inflicted on others. The ripples from his life spread far beyond his physical existence. In Dorne, the Martells carry their grief and rage forward. Oberyn achieved his confession before dying, forcing Gregor to admit publicly what he did to Elia. Everyone in that arena heard the truth, but hearing it didn't heal the wound. The Sand Snakes, Oberyn's daughters, inherit his quest for vengeance. Ellaria Sand, who watched her lover's skull collapse, will never escape that moment. Dorne's hatred for House Lannister remains absolute. The Riverlands bears different scars. Empty villages dot the landscape where Gregor's campaign erased entire communities. Survivors who fled never returned. Their children grow up hearing stories about the mountain that rides, tales that sound exaggerated until you meet someone who was actually there. The trauma passes from generation to generation, a wound that won't heal because the system that enabled it never changed. Sandor Clegane's path forward, whatever form it takes, leads away from his brother's shadow. Some accounts place him on the Quiet Isle, digging graves among silent brothers, finally finding peace after a lifetime of violence. Other tellings suggest he returns for one final confrontation, brother against brother, ending what began when Gregor shoved a child's face into burning coals. Either way, Sandor's entire life was shaped by that single act of cruelty decades ago. Arya Stark carries Harrenhal with her across the narrow sea and back. The things she witnessed there, the daily torture and casual murder, fundamentally altered her understanding of how the world works. Her training with the Faceless Men builds on foundations laid in Gregor's torture chambers. She learned early that monsters are real, that they're often protected, and that justice requires taking it yourself because nobody else will provide it. The Brotherhood without banners exists because Gregor's atrocities demanded a response when official channels failed. Beric Dondarrion's repeated resurrections serve a purpose built on defending those the system abandons. They fight for small folk because lords like Tywin Lannister view common people as expendable resources. The Brotherhood's entire reason for existing traces directly back to Gregor's Riverlands campaign. What created the Mountain ultimately matters less than understanding how he operated for so long without consequences. The physical condition was real, the pain was genuine, the lack of normal empathy existed from childhood. But none of those factors forced anyone to protect him. None of them required Tywin to employ him. None of them prevented Robert Baratheon from demanding justice after the sack of King's Landing. Gregor Clegane was useful. That's the entire explanation. He did dirty work that great lords needed done but couldn't acknowledge. He delivered messages written in blood and terror. He broke enemy morale through calculated atrocity. And because he was useful to powerful people, those people ensured he never faced meaningful consequences until Oberyn Martell forced the issue in an arena. Even then, even dying from poison and confessing his crimes publicly, the system found a way to preserve him. Qyburne's experiments gave Cersei the champion she needed for her own trial. Gregor's usefulness extended beyond death itself, his corpse transformed into a weapon still serving Lannister interests. The true horror isn't that one man could be so evil. History produces monsters regularly. The horror is how thoroughly the system enabled him, protected him, and ultimately rewarded him with power and status. He was knighted by a prince. He commanded Harrenhal. He joined the Kingsguard after death. Every step of his path was sanctioned by authority. 3 open questions defined Gregor's story from the beginning. What created him? Would justice ever come? Could such a monster exist within the supposedly civilized structures of Westerosi society? The first question has an answer now. He was born with deficits in empathy, shaped by chronic pain, and enabled by people who valued his violence. All 3 factors combined to create the Mountain. But the enabling was crucial. Without protection from House Lannister, local authorities would have stopped him years earlier. Without Tywin's patronage, he'd have faced consequences long before reaching Harrenhal. The second question about justice remains frustratingly incomplete. Oberyn forced a public confession before dying. Gregor suffered unimaginable agony from the poison. He either died and escaped further punishment, or exists in perpetual torment, as says Robert Strong. None of these outcomes feel adequate for thousands of murders, but adequate justice for crimes on that scale might be impossible. The third question answers itself through Gregor's entire life. Yes, monsters can exist within civilized society. They can be knighted, granted lands, given command of armies. They can serve kings and wear white cloaks. The structures meant to prevent such things instead facilitate them when the monster is useful enough to the right people. Book readers await potential resolution in future volumes. Will Sir Robert Strong face Sandor in trial by combat? Will the helmet finally come off, revealing what Qyburne created? Will the brothers' story reach a definitive conclusion? These questions remain open, the narrative incomplete. But Gregor Clegane's impact on Westeros is already written permanently. He changed the political landscape. He traumatized an entire region. He destroyed countless lives and created ripples that will affect events for generations. The empty villages, the grieving families, the children who grew up hearing his name as a synonym for nightmare. All of that endures regardless of what happens to his reanimated corpse. His story serves as a reminder of what happens when strength lacks conscience and power lacks accountability. When useful monsters receive protection instead of punishment. When the innocent are considered acceptable casualties in games played by lords who never face consequences themselves. The mountain that rides is gone, transformed into something else entirely. But the lesson remains. Watch for the next monster, recognize them early, and ask yourself whether their usefulness to the powerful matters more than justice for their victims. That question faces every society, eventually. Westeros answered it by protecting Gregor Clegane for 32 years. The costs of that choice are still being paid in empty villages and orphaned children and survivors who wake screaming from memories they can't escape. May those who come after learn from this cautionary tale. May they recognize monsters before those monsters accumulate 3 decades of victims. And may they choose justice over utility when the powerful demand protection for their useful tools of terror. This is the complete story of Gregor Clegane, the most feared knight in Westeros, from burning his brother to crushing Oberyn's skull to whatever existence he experiences now inside Qyburn's creation. This is what he was. This is what he did. This is the darkness he left behind. The scars remain long after the mountain has fallen.